The night my ex-wife reached out, I was sitting alone at my kitchen table, eating cold food off a chipped plate, listening to the house make its usual noises. Pipes knocking, wind worrying the window frames. That place has known me longer than she ever did. When her name lit up my phone, it felt like the past had found my address again and decided to knock instead of staying buried. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the screen and thought, so this is how it starts. Before I tell you what she wanted, or why her friends think I'm some kind of villain, you need to know who I am. Not the version she's been selling lately. The real one. The man I was before love, before compromise, before I learned how quiet betrayal can be. I'm an American man, born middle class, and raised with the understanding that nobody was coming to save me. My father worked until his hands cracked. My mother stretched meals and tempers and hope. We didn't talk about feelings much, but we showed up. That was the rule. You show up, even when you're tired. Especially then. I learned early how to carry my own weight. By 18, I could fix an engine, pour concrete, and keep my mouth shut when it mattered. I didn't dream big. I worked steady. Dreams are fragile. Work holds. I went into a trade after high school. Not glamorous. Honest. The kind of work that leaves marks on your hands and lets you sleep at night. I stayed with it for decades. Same field, different companies. Promotions came slow, but they came. I never chased titles. I chased stability. By my 30s, I own a modest house. No fancy finishes. Solid bones. I pay my bills on time. I didn't owe anyone explanations. That mattered to me. I met my ex-wife in that stretch of life where you start believing you've earned something good. She was smart, charming, ambitious in a way I admired back then. She laughed easily. She made me feel seen. Not deeply, I realize now, but enough. We married young enough to grow together, or so I thought. I wasn't perfect. I worked long hours. I valued routine. I believe love was something you maintained, like a roof or a savings account. You don't gush over it every day. You make sure it doesn't leak. When our marriage ended years later, it wasn't dramatic. No screaming matches. No thrown dishes. Just erosion. The quiet kind. The kind nobody warns you about. She wanted more. More excitement. More validation. More something she couldn't name without blaming me. I wanted peace. Consistency. A life that didn't feel like a performance. We divorced cleanly. No kids together. No shared property worth fighting over. She walked away lighter than she arrived. I stayed put. After that, I rebuilt my life the slow way. I learned how to enjoy my own company. Learned how silence can be restorative instead of lonely. I cooked for myself. Traveled alone. Built a small circle of people who didn't ask for much and didn't offer lies. I dated here and there. Nothing serious. I wasn't afraid of love. I was just done bargaining with it. Years passed. Enough that my ex-wife became a story I rarely told. Until she called. By then, I had my life dialed in. Same house. Better furniture. Fewer illusions. I had money in the bank and peace in my chest. I woke up when I wanted. I answered to no one. And I was content. Not euphoric. Not numb. Just steady. That's important. Because when people hear what happened next, they assume I was bitter. Or lonely. Or secretly waiting for her to come back. I wasn't. She married again after me. An ideal man, according to mutual acquaintances. Charismatic. Well-spoken. The kind who takes pictures that look like advertisements. He came with promises and posture. They built a life fast. 2 kids. Suburban photos. Smiles tight enough to pass for happiness. And then, he left. Just walked out. Left her with 2 children and a pile of unanswered questions. Turns out ideal men are often just well-lit illusions. That's when she remembered my number. When I finally listened to the voicemail, her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. Careful. Polite. Like she was approaching a fence she wasn't sure she had permission to cross. She said my name the way people do when they want something. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel triumph. Mostly, I felt tired. Because I knew, before she even asked, that she was going to frame this like fate. Like a second chance. Like life circling back around to fix a mistake. And I also knew I wasn't the man she left anymore. The hook people miss is this. I didn't refuse her because I hated her. I refused her because I finally understood myself. And that, apparently, is unforgivable. She didn't call again that night. That was the first thing that told me she hadn't changed as much as she wanted me to believe. If she'd been desperate, truly desperate, she would have tried twice. People in real trouble don't wait politely. They don't respect boundaries they once ignored. Instead, she sent a text the next morning. "Hey, I hope you're doing well. I don't know if you saw my call. I was wondering if we could talk sometime." No urgency, no apology, no context, just enough restraint to make it look mature. I read it once. Then I put the phone face down and went about my day. I changed the oil in my truck, took a walk through the neighborhood, made myself lunch. Life didn't pause just because she decided to knock on the door of the past. By mid-afternoon, curiosity caught up with me. Not hope, not longing, just curiosity. The kind you feel when an old scar starts itching for no reason. So I replied, "You can talk. I'm not making promises." She answered almost immediately. That told me she'd been staring at her phone, waiting. "Thank you. That means a lot. Won't it be good for you?" That line made me smile, thin and humorless. Won't it be good for me? She'd never asked that before. Not really. We agreed on the evening. A phone call. Neutral ground. No nostalgia in a coffee shop. No rehearsed tears across a table. When her voice came through the line, it was softer than I remembered. Slower. There was strain there. The kind that comes from carrying too much alone, or from wanting people to think you are. She asked how I was. I answered honestly, but briefly. I asked how she was. There was a pause. Then the story came out, carefully arranged. He'd changed, she said. Or maybe he'd always been that way, and she just hadn't wanted to see it. He became distant after the second child. Longer hours. Fewer explanations. One night, he didn't come home. A week later, he said he was done. No screaming. No counseling. No attempt to fix anything. He said he wasn't built for this, she told me. For responsibility. For being needed all the time. I didn't comment. I've learned silence makes people reveal more than questions ever do. She talked about the kids next. How young they were. How confused. How exhausted she was. How she hadn't slept through the night in months. Then, inevitably, she talked about herself. How alone she felt. How afraid. How everything she'd built had collapsed. How she'd realized she'd made mistakes in the past. Plural. Conveniently vague. Finally, she said my name again. Slower this time. "I've been thinking a lot about us," she said. "About what we had. About what I threw away." There it was. The pivot. The moment she'd been working toward. I let the silence stretch long enough to make it uncomfortable. "What are you asking?" I said. She inhaled sharply, like she'd been bracing for a cold plunge. "I don't know," she said, which was a lie. "I guess. I was hoping maybe we could try again. Slowly. Carefully. I know things are complicated now, but you're alone," I said, not unkindly. "And you remember I was safe." That stopped her. "I remember you were good to me," she said. I closed my eyes. Not in pain. In recognition. "That's not the same thing," I said. She didn't argue. Instead, she shifted tactics. She talked about growth. Therapy. Lessons learned. She talked about how different she was now. How motherhood had changed her priorities. How she finally understood what mattered. Then she said the quiet part out loud. "I could really use someone steady right now." There it was. The truth slipping through the cracks. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lecture. I just told her what she hadn't expected to hear. "I'm not interested." The line went dead silent. I could practically hear her recalibrating, searching for the right combination of words that had worked on other men. "You don't even want to see me?" she asked. "Talk in person?" "No," I said. "Because this isn't about seeing me. It's about needing someone to catch you." She tried one last angle. The one people always save for the end. "I thought you'd understand," she said. "After everything we shared." "I do understand," I replied. "That's why I'm saying no." She cried then. Quietly. Respectably. Not the kind of crying that scares you. Just enough to make you look heartless if you don't soften. I didn't soften. We ended the call civilly. No slam phones. No final insults. Just a heavy goodbye that sat between us like a closed door. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Because rejection is one thing. Rejection with dignity is another. And that's the one people punish you for. It started with messages from mutual acquaintances. Then escalated to calls. then turned into judgment disguised as concern. Her friends reached out first. Women I barely knew. Women who had always smiled politely when we were married and barely remember my name after. They wanted to talk some sense into me. They said things like, "She's been through so much." Like, "You're really her only support." Like, "A good man wouldn't turn his back now." One of them said, "Not every man would get a second chance like this." I told her she was right. Then I hung up. That's when the tone changed. Suddenly, I wasn't reserved or cautious or self-aware. I was cold, selfish, emotionally unavailable. One message accused me of punishing her for choosing happiness once. Another said I was afraid of responsibility. That one made me laugh out loud. They spoke as if I owed her redemption, as if my life was a holding cell she could return to after the world disappointed her. None of them asked what I wanted. Not one. They saw a single mother struggling, and a man who refused to resume his old position as emotional infrastructure. That was unforgivable. What none of them understood was this. I didn't walk away because it was easy. I walked away because I'd already lived the version of myself that disappears to make other people comfortable. And I wasn't going back. The calls kept coming. The accusations sharpened. Some of them hinted I'd regret this, that someday I'd be old and alone and wish I'd chosen differently. They didn't know I already was old enough to know better and alone enough to value peace. The irony is this. When I was younger, I might have caved, confused guilt for virtue, mistaken endurance for love. But time strips that confusion away, and what it leaves you with is clarity and a spine strong enough to stand in it. By the end of that week, I blocked the numbers. All of them. Not out of anger, out of respect for the life I'd built. And somewhere out there, my ex-wife was learning a lesson she'd never planned on studying. That not every closed door is cruelty. Some are simply boundaries, finally enforced. Silence didn't last. It never does when people decide you're the problem. At first, it was just blocked numbers and unread messages piling up like unopened mail. I figured that was the end of it. I'd said no, clearly, calmly, without cruelty. That should have been enough. But when someone builds a story where you're the answer, your refusal doesn't register as a choice. It registers as a malfunction. The next wave came sideways. A guy I used to work with reached out. We weren't close. Hadn't spoken in years. His message was friendly in that forced way people get when they're carrying someone else's words. "Hey man, heard you're going through some stuff. Just want to check in." I knew before I replied. We met for coffee. Neutral ground. Public place. He talked about work, about the weather, about nothing. Then he leaned back, folded his arms, and sighed like he was about to deliver bad news. He said, "She's really struggling." There was again. That phrase. Like a hammer. I nodded once. "I know. She's got 2 kids," he added, as if I'd forgotten, as if I was supposed to feel the weight of children who weren't mine settle onto my shoulders. "I'm aware," I said. He looked at me harder then, like he was searching for something. Regret, maybe. Shame. "People are saying you could help," he said carefully. I took a sip of my coffee. Let cool my tongue. Bought myself time. I agreed. "I'm choosing not to." His jaw tightened. "That's cold," he said. "No," I replied. "It's honest." We didn't finish the conversation. He left disappointed, which told me everything I needed to know. He hadn't come to listen. He'd come to deliver a verdict. After that, the pressure got louder. I heard through the grapevine that she'd been crying openly now. At school pickups, at gatherings, letting people see just enough damage to make them angry on her behalf. The story shifted. At first, it was he said no. Then it became he abandoned her. Finally, it was he's punishing her for leaving years ago. That one stuck. Funny thing is, I didn't have the energy to punish anyone. I'd already done the work of letting go. Punishment requires attachment. I didn't have that anymore. But nuance doesn't travel well. One afternoon, I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper. No name, just handwriting I recognized from years ago, one of her closest friends. "You're really showing your true colors. I hope you can live with yourself." I stood there for a long time, staring at that piece of paper. Not angry, not shaken, just aware. Aware that this wasn't about morality anymore. It was about roles. In their minds, I had a part to play. The dependable ex. The fallback option. The man who absorbs damage quietly so other people can keep believing in their own narratives. By refusing, I'd broken the script. And people don't forgive that easily. What surprised me wasn't the hostility, it was the certainty. None of them asked questions. None of them wondered if maybe I'd changed, or healed, or simply didn't want to reopen something I'd already buried. They saw a woman in distress and a man who wouldn't step back into line. That was enough. One night, I ran into her by accident. Grocery store. Late. Empty aisles and fluorescent lighting. She looked thinner, tired, older in a way that comes from disappointment, not time. We locked eyes for half a second too long. She came toward me slowly, like she wasn't sure I was real. "I didn't think I'd see you," she said. "I didn't think I'd be seen," I replied. She nodded. That small nod people give when they're pretending they're okay. "They've been telling me you're angry," she said. "I'm not." She looked confused by that. Hurt, even. "Then why won't you help?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I studied her face, the familiar lines, the unfamiliar weight behind her eyes. "Because help that comes from obligation isn't help," I said. "It's a debt, and I already paid mine." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry this time. "I thought you loved me once," she said. "I did," I answered. "That's why I'm not doing this." She searched my face again, hoping to find a crack. Something to push on, something that would give. There wasn't anything left. When she walked away, I felt something unexpected. Not relief, not sadness. Finality. That night, I sat alone in my house, the same house I'd kept all these years. The walls were quiet, solid. They didn't ask anything of me. I thought about the younger version of myself, the one who would have folded under this kind of pressure, the one who would have confused sacrifice with virtue and called it love. I felt a strange gratitude that life had taught me differently. People like to say you'll regret choosing yourself. What they don't tell you is how exhausting it is to live as someone else's solution. I wasn't her safety net anymore. I was my own man. And if that made me the villain in someone else's story, I could live with that. Because for the first time in a long time, I was sleeping just fine. Time did what it always does. It moved on, whether anyone was ready or not. The noise around my decision faded first. Outrage has a short shelf life when there's nothing left to feed it. Her friends found new causes, new villains, new emergencies that required their attention. I slipped out of their conversations the same way I'd slipped out of her life, quietly, without ceremony. She stopped reaching out. Not all at once. At first, there were still indirect feelers. Someone asking how I was. Someone else saying she hoped I was okay. Eventually, even that dried up. The world adjusted to the idea that I wasn't coming back. I imagined she had to adjust too. I heard, secondhand, that she'd moved closer to her parents, that she was working again, that she'd learned how to carry both kids at once without help. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. Closure doesn't come from knowing how the other person is doing. It comes from knowing you won't go back. What stayed with me wasn't guilt or even sadness. It was clarity. For years, I thought strength looked like endurance. Staying. Holding the line, no matter the cost. I thought leaving was weakness or selfishness or failure dressed up as freedom. Turns out I had it backwards. Walking away, really walking away, without bitterness or revenge, that takes something else entirely. It takes knowing the difference between love and usefulness, between loyalty and habit, between being needed and being chosen. She didn't choose me when she had options. She remembered me when she ran out of them. That's not love. That's inventory. I still live in the same house, same truck, same quiet mornings. But something inside me shifted for good. There's no waiting anymore. No sense that life is on hold until someone else decides what I'm worth. Every now and then, I catch myself thinking about her kids, not in longing, not in regret. Just hope. Hope they grow up seeing that responsibility isn't something you outsource when it gets heavy. Hope they learn that love doesn't come with a return policy. As for me, I kept the one thing I almost gave away years ago. My self-respect. It doesn't make for a dramatic ending. No big reconciliation. No tearful reunion. No final argument where everyone understands each other at last. Real life doesn't work that way. Sometimes the strongest ending is just a man closing a door, locking it, and going back to his own table. where the food might be simple, but it's his and it's earned, and it tastes like peace. That's the story. Not about refusing her, about finally choosing myself.